Greetings everyone, my name is Travis Barber and this is my presentation on class participation. My main research question for this study was, what impact do weekly journals have on class participation? To provide a bit of context, this wasn't a study on my own class. I'm not currently teaching this year, but I got the opportunity to study directly with a TA from FAU. Her name was Miss Tisdale. She taught ENC 1102. So as I spoke with her and we spoke about the opportunity of me actually researching her class, she was telling me how her course begins at 7 a.m. and a lot of her students just weren't focused. They were uninterested. She said it was so bad to the point that one student was actually doing his math homework in her English course. So there was a complete disconnect between her and the students. She said that there were very few that actually would speak up during discussions. So she was looking for a way to increase class participation. She wanted to, create that dialogue between her and the students. So as a result, Ms. Tisdale developed the Journal Day program to help increase class participation and improve class discussion. Basically what she would have students do is go out and seek a current event that kind of relates to the themes of the week's text. So students would come into class on Friday with their journals in hand. They were required to just write a short paragraph, and it was meant as a method to jumpstart the weekly discussion. She saw it as a way to basically get students' opinions. She felt that maybe involving the students a bit more in that discussion process, getting their opinions, allowing them to relate to one another and compare thoughts would make discussion a bit easier. So once I heard about this, she told me about this new item that she was trying out. I thought it was very clever, and I thought it would be a really interesting thing to study. So this is where I came in. I began studying her course the first week of Journal Day. So just a brief literature review of some studies that actually inspired my research. Carl Costco from KSU conducted a study where he observed a class over the course of 4 meetings. Now, 2 of these class sessions were taught with what's called the univocal format, the traditional rote learning lecture style where the instructor dominates the discussion. And the second 2 sessions were taught with the dialogic approach where the instructor actively engages students, prompts them for interaction. This was actually done through a mathematics course. So, whether it was via pop quiz or, citing students for the next step in the mathematical process, he ultimately found that this system, the dialogic approach, helped students to learn more, think critically, and react on the spot. Another study that was instrumental for me was done by Krista Fritzen. She focused more on the effects of student journaling. She determined that journals can help students with articulation and that the journals don't need to be collected or graded. Between this work that she did and the work by Costco that I mentioned before, these really stressed for me the importance of journals and class participation. The issue is that I struggled to find studies that connected the two and found the way that one can accommodate the other. So that's why I felt that I could come in and try to provide, this knowledge to the field. So as I mentioned before, I observed 5 consecutive weeks of Journal Day. My strategy was to sit at the front of the class as close to the professor as I could and actually face the class so I could record which students participated in the discussion and how often they participated in said discussion. So at the conclusion of each class, I would interview one student to try to, get their perspective and thoughts on how the Journal Day program was going. Wanted to know exactly what they thought. Did they like it? Did they feel like it helped at all? Maybe helped them to understand the text, helped them to participate more, to think about themes throughout the text via current event, just anything to see, what it was like from the student perspective. So I would follow that with meeting with Miss Tisdale herself. I just wanted to see, obviously from the instructor perspective, if she had noticed any changes from her students, her class, any minor observations that she might have had if she noticed progress, etc. Maybe the quotes weren't always the most helpful, but I thought it could help to provide a bit more context as to what I was seeing. So, this is something, the quotes that I used in conjunction with my observations and my quantitative data, to really analyze what was happening before me. So at the end of each session, I would tally how many times each student spoke, and then how many times the class participated in the discussion for that week as a whole. So I would measure these numbers alongside, the weekly quotes, my observations from my personal journal, and, just try to gauge the impact that the journals were having on the class. So these are a bit of the results from the conclusion of my research. I did find that participation increased significantly during the Journal Day program. We noticed students could be seen regularly referring to their journals. Even some of them in the interviews mentioned that they were a bit more comfortable. They noticed that the journals definitely allowed them to loosen up. The instructor herself, Ms. Tisdale, noticed a more lively discussion, a greater student interest. And myself personally, I noticed that there weren't as many disinterested students as she mentioned before. The majority of the class did seem pretty locked in on the discussion. Maybe only a handful, I want to say about 2 to 3 students that didn't participate at all during the entirety of this 5-week study. Here's just a small sample of some of the quantitative data that I recorded throughout this study. This just shows weeks 2 through 4, and you can kind of see, as a class, how everything really peaked during week 4. But you can see how the students' participation patterns kind of fluctuated from week to week. And this was a general idea of the Excel spreadsheet that I used over the course of this study. These are just a few of my reflections from the study. The main thing is that the energy was vital. Everything that Ms. Tisdale utilized, whether it was, starting the class off with video, playing a sample of some audio, whether she would reference an article or, cite a recent television show, she always found new ways to keep the students interested. Really, I felt like it was that in conjunction with the journal that, raised everyone's interest and helped the course to flow a bit better. So the primary thing I took from it was just her approach. Definitely her enthusiasm was palpable, and it trickled down ultimately to the students. You could find them referencing their journals to jump into the discussion, make points. Even in a few cases, you could see students writing things down in preparation to raise their hand. You got that feeling that they wanted to really contribute to the discussion and make sure that what they said was worthwhile. Personally, I was really just taken back and impressed by the way Ms. Tisdale made it a priority to connect with students. That's how I viewed the journal personally. It was a method to get students talking, thinking, get them to share their own opinions. It seemed really like covering the text in that traditional manner wasn't grasping anyone's attention. But when they were asked for their thoughts, and to cite what they thought, you recognize the conscious effort to articulate, sometimes to debate amongst one another. When the topic came down to prejudice, one week we spoke about advertisement, etc. Students began sharing anecdotes of things that they experienced in the past. So you could see when it was relatable for the students, they took a much greater interest in the course at General, and you can see that Ms. Tisdale recognized that and truly capitalized on it. I feel like Ms. Tisdale's greatest strength was the ability to make an adjustment. Mid-semester, when I first spoke with her, Journal Day wasn't even a part of her syllabus. So she actually mid-semester changed her entire syllabus to be able to accommodate this. something within her. She saw the value of the discussion and how it would be able to change the direction of her course, and she quickly made that change and adjustment. So that made that the entire term of action research, the action in that term action research, relevant to me. It really clicked. The discussion began to flow, and she began to change herself. She became more of a moderator from what I saw, whereas early on she needed to direct and encourage students at first to participate. But obviously as the semester progressed, the videos, the audio, just the natural flow of the discussion, she didn't need to direct as much. And one of the minor changes she made was just calling on students, keeping things in order, and letting the discussion grow from there. She really recognized how productive the dialogue was and let that breathe. And that was very impressive to me, that she was willing to do whatever was needed to ensure that the students were responding and really taking something from the text and the week's reading. So I'm hoping that I can bring some of these skills to the classroom. Honestly, I can only hope to be half as versatile as Ms. Tisdale was. I hope that I can connect with my students in a similar way. I hope that I have that foresight to be able to make a necessary change if I see, and I'm just grateful for the opportunity. She actually let me sit in, so it helped me more than just completing this assignment. But I think there's something that I can take from this, just being able to adjust on the fly and, recognize when improvement can be made, not only on the student side. Obviously, we work to, help the students learn, but, as an instructor, as an educator, you've got to make those adjustments yourself. That is my time, folks. Thank you for listening. Again, my name is Travis Barber, and this is my presentation on class participation.